So, it's taken me a while to try and write a script in a way that isn't just explaining other theories. With a highly debated topic like Andrew, trying to make a theory based on him requires you to go all over the evidence that he's in the game timeline at all. And it gets very tiring to do that every time someone wants to talk about him. So, I decided that for this theory, it will be based on a few assumptions that other theories are correct. These other theories are Andrew Games, Andrew MCI, Vengeful Andrew, Fright Secondary Canon, and Into the Pit Loop. I will most likely make videos on all these theories at some point, but if you want to go into this, knowing everything, I'd recommend just doing a look into these theories, or if you already know them, then well. Again, as I said, I'll probably do a video on all these theories in the future though. But first, I'd like to go over Andrew's role real quick. Andrew's the secret forgotten victim of Afton, who eventually goes on to torture him in Ultimate Custom Night. Based on Return to the Pit, it seems Andrew was killed 2 days before the 5 MCI kids, which would make his death on June 24th, 1985. Now, something I think we should note is that it seems that unlike the other kids, Andrew was never stuffed into a suit. In Return to the Pit, we find his body in the safe room just lying on the floor. It would also make sense that Andrew doesn't seem to possess any character at Freddy's. In fact, in Phasma Frights, we see him wearing a Monty mask, who is a character who we know, next to Secret of the Mimic, existed since the 70s, but was not an actual full-use animatronic at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, or, well, at least at the one that Andrew died at. Now, if Andrew wasn't stuffed into an animatronic and possessed an animatronic, that raises a little question. Why the fuck is Andrew represented by Monty? It would honestly make more sense for him to be represented by Springbond, considering Andrew haunted Afton's corpse for a while. We know this due to the fact that both in-game and in Frights, it's very clearly spelled out that Andrew latched onto William's corpse, and after the FNaF 6 fire, when William was weak enough, that's when he started torturing him. But that's when I remembered a line from the FNaF 3 phone calls. After the Springlock suits were decommissioned, replacement costumes were sent to the location to be used in the meantime. Now, I feel like a lot of people in the theories community, ever since about the time of maybe Ultimate Custom Night, I think I was around the time, agreed that the mediocre melodies were those replacement costumes. Now, Secret of the Mimic shows us that Monty was originally grouped with the mediocre melodies and was a mascot costume. So, I think it's safe to assume that a Monty suit might have been one of those replacements. And maybe that's why Andrew was represented by an alligator. He possessed the Monty suit for a little while. We know thanks to Charlie possessing the puppet, you don't need to actively be stuffed inside an animatronic for you to possess it. She died outside the restaurant, and then the puppet ended up falling next to her dead body, and then she possessed it. So if Andrew's body was left in the safe room for a while before Afton would have disposed of it, maybe his soul would have latched on to something within that safe room. And considering that the mascot costumes were being kept in that safe room, it makes sense that he would have connected to one of those, which was probably the theoretical Monty suit. Now, you could also say that his body was hidden in the Monty suit. Now, that is possible. It could also be a very likely, if not more likely option. Whatever option you want. Either he was left in the safe room for a while and his soul latched onto it, kind of like the puppet did with Charlie. Or you could say that Afton hid his body in that Monty suit and then just possessed it that way. Now, all that stuff with the Monty suit is mainly a hypothesis based on taking bits of evidence and just filling in a few gaps, but I do think it is a good explanation for why Andrew is connected to Monty, and Monty specifically. I also think the idea that Andrew was attached to a non-movable mascot suit in the back room where no animatronic can enter could explain the fact that in Frights, he stated to not have any friends. In Frights, it's very clearly spelled out that Andrew had 0 friends, even though he was in Freddy's for a very long time. So, could it be that he was in the safe room? His soul was trapped in the safe room, the area where none of the animatronics can enter, even with the souls possessing them as we see in the Follow Me minigames. This is also the reason why none of the spirits mention him, or why he's not involved with anything that the main spirits are. He just wasn't known. They didn't know about his existence, not even the puppet. That's why even in Frights, She doesn't acknowledge Andrew whenever her mask is brought out. Assuming that parts of her soul is still stuck in there, she just fucking laser beams Afton or whatever, and then mask falls to the bottom of the lake. This also explains how he eventually got attached to William's corpse. Both would have been trapped in the safe room for a while. Andrew ever since having his soul attached to the Monty costume, and Afton ever since getting spring-locked. During that time, Andrew probably attached himself to Afton's corpse, but Afton wasn't weak enough yet for him to start torturing him. So, eventually, whenever Afton was made weak enough after the events of FNaF 6 and its fire, he was weak enough for, Andrew to start torturing him and begin the events of Ultimate Custom Night. Alright, now that I've explained all this stuff with how Andrew became represented with Monty and how he eventually attached himself to Afton's corpse to eventually begin to torture him in the events of Ultimate Custom Night, I'd like to lean into something that I've noticed. William and Andrew are kind of similar. Both let one emotion take over their whole personality, all of who they are, and it sends them down a rabbit hole that both hurts others and themselves. For Afton, he let his pure jealousy and hatred towards Henry build up to the point where he killed Charlie as a way to hurt Henry. This led William down the rabbit hole wanting to kill more people, discovering Remnant and his obsession with immortality. This eventually led to him causing harm to so many people, but also eventually his own downfall. Now, with Andrew, he let his anger and rage and vengeance define who he was for decades. So whenever he got the chance to, he gave William an endless torture and suffering, never letting William leave, but also never letting Andrew himself move on. He's harming himself. He's letting himself stay in a place that is just nothing but pure anger and horror, not letting himself bring to peace. Also, he can get some petty rage done. Both have narratives of letting their emotions define who they are and leading to their own downfall. All this almost acts like Andrew is a second side of a coin for William. Now, they aren't the complete same, obviously. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they share parallels. And whether or not you think Andrew is canon or not, you have to admit that this sounds like at least a bit of a compelling story. Andrew, William's most forgotten and unknown victim, is the one most like William, and the one who actually let himself kind of become like William, to a very lesser extent, of course. The main reason I wanted to make this video was to try and give a compelling story to Andrew. I saw Cyrus Squawks do this, and he did a very good job, even though I don't agree with a lot of it. I feel like even though Andrew isn't commonly considered to be canon by the community, a lot of people should give him a compelling arc. Even if you don't think it's canon, still, it's nice to make theories about things you don't think are canon to the games. But that's all I have to say, so I guess thanks for watching, and find better content to watch. Mine sucks.